saw a familiar face walking on the avenue, both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced like old friends often do.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung. It's May 8, 2024. The title of the show is Consequences of Gaza, Biden, and Trump. All these shows are now being posted on YouTube, so all you have to do is go to YouTube, Gung Ho Shows by Joseph Giannini on YouTube. Jim Henry's with me. He's been on my show as a co-host many times. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our pedigree so you understand where we're coming from, all right? I'm 80 years old. I was in Vietnam when I was in my prime. I went from the Marine Corps to law school. I practiced criminal defense law for like over 40 years until I couldn't do it anymore. I care about what's going on. I met Jim over 20 years ago. I call him a true believer. He cares, and he's an investigative journalist, and he can tell you more about himself. Go ahead.
Well, I don't, I invite people to Google me on, to see my background, but basically I'm a lawyer, economist, investigative journalist. I teach at Yale, and I have a tremendous interest in the issues of the day that involve international politics and economics, and we've been worrying about that. I'm also an ACLU cooperating attorney. I've represented you and in a number of cases, and also the
Eastern
Presbyterian Church in the Eastern District of New York when we took on the village of Southampton when they tried to shut down the 4th of July parade way back when, and we prevailed in that action. So since then, we've been trying to do the right thing here.
You're a Harvard grad. You're a Harvard Law School grad.
Yeah, all that stuff. Chuck Schumer is my classmate.
Wait, Yale?
No, at Harvard.
Harvard.
That's been a disappointment, but I mean, I've watched a number of my classmates kind of move to the right during this last 30 years.
Yeah, I want to get to the subject now. You're an expert on the Middle East. You're an expert on all kinds of misconduct. You're an expert on international financial crimes. But let's start with Gaza. What you know, how did Hamas come about?
Well, the interesting thing about Hamas, which is, I think, has done an enormous amount of damage to the world here. We can talk about all the side effects of the October 7th massacres. But Hamas has an interesting history. Back in the late 80s, Israel was facing a rising movement among Palestinians. Not only in the West Bank, but also in the area called Gaza, which is about 1% of the total West Bank area. Of all of Israel and Palestine, about 23% is devoted now to Palestinians. Hamas has been running the Gaza area, which is about 1%, since 2006. And they are a more religious organization, a Sunni organization that is pretty extreme in their views toward Israel. But the interesting issue that we've come to appreciate is that Hamas has this sort of strange relationship with Israel, and specifically with the Netanyahu government. They have been used to divide the Palestinians. You know, the Palestinians who are in the West Bank are basically under the Palestinian Authority, and Fatah which was Arafat's movement. It was more secular and less overtly religious or Islamic. So over a long period of time, Israel has had a tendency to allow Hamas during periods when it saw an advantage to offset
Keep them-
Fatah, to keep them divided. And the most recent example of that, and the thing that most Americans simply don't know, is that Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, basically greenlit the distribution of more than $1 billion from the government of Qatar to Hamas after 2019. A friend of mine who works at Mossad in Israel, their intelligence service, said that he was told to stand down his terror finance unit because Netanyahu wanted to basically allow Hamas to grow and prosper during this most recent period. And there are several statements on the record where Netanyahu has said that. It's well documented. So, the Hamas has built all these tunnels. How did they afford them? Well, all the money most of it flowed through Israeli banks into Hamas from Qatar with the blessing of Netanyahu. So at the end of the day, I mean, many of us suspect that this was expected in a way. I mean, they knew that Hamas was dangerous, and they've had warnings dating back to at least 2016. The New York Times has covered this. There were an awful lot of warnings that Hamas was preparing a massive military operation. So the first question to ask yourselves about October 7th is, how could it happen? It was one of the most well-defended borders in the Middle East, all kinds of electronic sensors, fancy fences, just military base there that got overwhelmed on October 7th. It took the Israeli IDF 7 hours to arrive before they could go there to defend the students. The American CIA, is also, I asked them, have they simply deferred to the Israeli intelligence services when it comes to monitoring Hamas? I just think it's very peculiar, and I think once this war is ended, assuming it will end at some point, we're going to need a major investigation of how this was allowed to happen, because in many ways its consequences are as far-reaching as 9/11. In the wake of this, we've seen Biden's popularity, the Democratic Party basically being put in a position of having to decide whether to continue to arm Israel or to try to get them to be more proportionate in their response to the Hamas attacks. And we've seen more than at least 35 to 40,000, we don't know because a lot of people are under the rubble, victims in Gaza of the Israeli response. Gaza today is a wasteland. It has to be, to be rebuilt, it would cost tens of billions of dollars. And furthermore, Israel just went into Rafah, which is on the Egyptian border. There's more than 1 million Palestinians who are exposed there. There's no food and water coming into that area. There's real threat of famine, as the UN has warned recently.
Jim,
And so this is all a catastrophe. And the United States seems to be, Biden administration specifically, has been unable to discipline the Israelis or to curtail, their excessive response here. I think a lot of people believe, if you listen to the Israeli right and you see the videos that Israelis are putting on the YouTube, many of them are talking about wiping Palestinians out once and for all. So, it's definitely weakened the Democratic Party. It's weakened Biden. It's split. We have this enormous wave of student protests all across the country, unlike anything we've seen since 1968. those students are not going to get out on the street and work for Biden. So I think it's beyond Trump's wildest dreams. We have this guy who's got 93 felony charges, and he's in four trials. We can see him every day now at this this trial in New York City. He's clearly his reputation has been damaged by that. The only way that he wins in the fall is if Biden continues to lose support within, the progressive movement.
I've given this a lot of thought. Biden has to step up and have the courage to stop the war. He's the only one that can do it. They just stopped the conveyor belt of armaments to Israel.
Yeah, yesterday.
I've done some research on this. Back during the Obama administration, they decided to give Israel these bunker buster bombs as a deterrent to Iran building nuclear weapons. So we gave them thousands upon thousands of these bunker buster bombs, but only the object was Iran. So what did they do? They used them on the Gazans.
The 2,000-pound bombs. Yeah, look, I have absolutely no sympathy with Hamas. If you look at what Hamas did, the consequences are they have empowered Putin because he basically has used this opportunity to take back Ukraine. He's got the Ukrainian freedom fighters on the rear foot during this period. Congress was delaying assistance to Putin, to the Ukraine during this period, and basically the aid is now just flowing. So that's definitely this Gaza thing has distracted us and helped Putin.
And it's dividing us.
It's divided us. It's made us start going back into kind of a McCarthy period with respect to civil liberties. You have Biden on the front page of the Times today denouncing anti-Semitism. Well, the upsurge, someone should just clue him in that the upsurge in protest is nothing to do with the rise of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is not the same as being critical of Israel. And, they're trying to get us to identify anti-Semitism with criticizing, Israel. And that's just a false
They've done
equivalence.
it. They've done it.
There are many Jewish Americans who are critical of what Netanyahu is doing. There are many Jews around the world who feel the same way we do about this. But there is
Suppose Biden actually stopped the war. Suppose he did that. He actually stopped the war. That's it. Israel, stop. It's over. We're sending in a UN force, observers. That's it. It's over. There's going to be two states. That's it.
Well, this is what Ronald Reagan actually did in the mid-'80s. He called up Ariel Sharon and he said, "You have a week to get out of Lebanon." People don't remember that history, but Reagan was very forceful in terms of getting Reagan. Reagan is not my favorite American president, but he did do. He did stand up for that. People don't understand this history. No, I think that I'm not opposed to the existence of Israel. The Jews have a right to the homeland after everything they've gone through.
I'm not opposed.
But the issue is, can we have a homeland for Palestinians as well? And they both have claims to that territory. If you wade into the history, you'll never come out. There's no easy answer to who was there first and who was there second and what happened. It's just far too complicated. We don't need to get lost in that maze. What we need to understand is justice requires a solution for both peoples. And if they're going to lose,
That means living side by side.
They don't have to be good. They're neighbors. They're both neighbors. They don't have to like each other. But they've got to put this behind them. That's the only way forward. And Biden should be saying that to the Israelis. That's what his message should be.
Biden is ineffective with the words don't mean anything. It's action. And I've done some research about Biden. He was in law school during the Vietnam War. He was eligible for the draft. He got 5 deferments. He called the protesters assholes. People against the Vietnam War, assholes.
Yeah, I mean, there's no record of his ever been involved in a single protest in the
Nothing.
1960s in civil rights or civil. He's not. That's not his shtick. His shtick was to become a politician, and he became a politician by being quiet about certain things, and by I mean, he was very close to DuPont for a very long time. That was his big thing until DuPont got into trouble with Teflon.
What about
he's-
Agent Orange?
He's been very powerful and very, not
Well-
very critical of Agent Orange. But Biden has always been kind of on the right side of the Democratic Party, and he's always prided himself on being someone who goes to all the IPAC conventions and meetings and puts his hand in the fire for Israel. But on this issue, he of all people should be able to tell Israel it's not in your interests, really, fundamentally, your interests, to go
He
on
has
with
been
this
telling
approach.
them.
Netanyahu is fighting this war for his own reasons. He's under indictment. He was caught taking bribes from a Hollywood producer who wanted to secure his tax. He wanted to secure a visa extension in the United States. It's unbelievable. Netanyahu secured him a meeting with John Kerry, and he got his visa extension, this Hollywood producer. But in exchange for that, he gave Netanyahu a lot of champagne, some watches. So he's facing removal from office. Israeli public is outraged at how they let this happen. And, he's facing a corruption trial. He may have to go to jail as soon as the war ends. So for Netanyahu, it's simple. Let's continue the war. It keeps him in office.
Wars against, you could have all the massive arms and you're fighting a guerrilla units. Vietnam went on for like 20 years. Afghanistan 20 years, Iraq 20 years, and these were just irregular forces fighting massive forces. Wars don't end that fast. You could start them real fast.
Right.
So, Biden.
So if Trump gets reelected, I mean, that's my worst case here. That would be terrible.
Like this, look, do you remember 1968? I was still in the Marine Corps. Nixon was running.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that were protesting didn't vote for Humphrey, and they got Nixon.
Right.
That's what's going to happen here unless people say, fuck it, I'm voting for Biden.
Well, I mean, it's, you have to sympathize with these students. I mean, you really do, because that's an impossible position they've been put in. I mean, it's from my standpoint, it's like, how's your backhand compared to what? It's not an absolute. It's like compared to what? And in that circumstance, Biden turns out to be the least worst option. You're not going to vote for Robert Kennedy. I mean, he was, but this situation that with Middle East is really having a profound impact on our election, and it is only helping Donald Trump.
People don't realize that Israel actually started the 1967 war, and that's when they seized Gaza from the Egyptians and they seized the West Bank in 1967. And they held on to it. Invading a territory and occupying it is a war crime. I mean, this has been going on, and we've been funding this war crime. Oh, and the other thing is, it's Biden's war now. It's his war. Like Johnson's war was Vietnam. Bush had Afghanistan and Iraq. It's their war. But it's not really their wars. It's our wars.
Well, I mean, the immediate, when you start talking about 1948 or 1967 or 1919, the Balfour Declaration, you can go and spend your life burying it, and there's people on all sides of those issues. The origins of the 1967 war are complicated. You know, some say that the Israelis were preempting coming strike on them. So, you know, there's a lot of historical work to be done in this. But the question is, right now, going forward, what's the right answer? Biden needs to toughen it up, and he has to get Israel to back off and basically say, you know, we're not going to take Rafah. That would be progress right now.
You know what else he has to do? I've been thinking, but he's got to seal the border for a while, and this is crazy. You have to seal the border, just stop this. People don't realize that we have an organization called ICE.
Oh, you mean on our border? You mean on the Mexican border? Yeah.
We have this ICE, and they round up people all the time, and they round up close to 1 million people every year and deport them. And the Democrats have deported more people than the Republicans. They do this all the time, and nobody says anything about it.
Well, you know, the border issues, I mean, I spent a lot of time on the border there and also in Central America. I mean, it's a complicated story. Basically, partly because of the U.S., the Central America has been allowed to become a pretty difficult place to live. We have global warming going on. It's hot as hell. Agriculture is not that productive, and people are reproducing and they're moving north. And, you know, a lot of the migrants who are coming here are being driven out by the economic situation that we helped to create there. The drug wars, you know, a country like Honduras I used to go to, 1984, I was in Honduras, and we discovered the Iran-Contras were training there, you know. Well, back then, Honduras, this tiny country in Central America, about 15 million people.
Corporations.
Our drug war, you know, just stop with that. You know, why are there drug gangs all over Honduras right now? I mean, the president of Honduras was just convicted of drug crimes. You know, we have basically given these countries a really hard time, and surprisingly enough, people want to leave. When they leave, you know, they're going to come here. But this is nothing compared to the mass migrations that we're about to have in the next 30 years, because we've done nothing about global warming. And so if the world temperature increases, as it's likely to increase by 2.5 degrees above the pre-industrial normal, that means that in the tropics, the average temperature will increase by 6 or 7 degrees. And that means Greenland melts, you've got massive food production problems, you've got price rises like you can't believe, and you've got 1 billion people who are in those those equatorial areas that are going to be coming north. They're going to go to Europe, and they're going to come to the United States.
We touched a little bit.
So there's no solution to this short of addressing big problems like global warming. Another thing Hamas has done for us, they've distracted us from these big issues like global warming. No progress being made on that.
Everybody has to realize that if Trump is the president again, he'll side with Israel 110%, and he'll side with Putin 110%. What Americans can't understand? That's not the right things to do. I mean,
well, we're scared. You know, Americans get frightened and they worry about their inflation rate is rising, and their pocketbook issues are really important. The Democrats have not been doing a very good job of addressing a lot of the issues that most ordinary Americans care about, like the border, like inflation, you know. And so when we have a situation like this, you know, yeah, Trump is they'll say, okay, he's not perfect. He's far from perfect.
No.
But he's our son of a bitch, you know.
Right, let's get this straight. I practiced criminal defense for over 40 years. Trump is a criminal. Beyond any doubt, he's a criminal. That indictment involving January 6th, he's a criminal. You don't have to be convicted to be deemed a criminal. You commit a crime, you're a criminal. He's a criminal.
Well, I suggest to you that anything he's done up to date is nothing compared to what he will do. He's already threatened people. He's got a long list of enemies that he wants to retaliate against. He's going to go after the journalists who have gone after him. He's going to go after all of the judges that gave him, a hard time. And I think we're facing a situation that's going to be a threat to our very democratic freedoms. So from that standpoint, yeah, there's no question that you have to go and vote for Biden in November.
Are you going to vote for Biden now?
I have to swallow hard for all of my criticisms of Biden.
You're going to vote for him?
I absolutely have to vote for Biden.
Oh.
Me too.
I mean, it's like how's your wife compared to what? It's sort of like, that's the economist.
What's happening to Trump now with that trial is a tragedy for him. And it's like a Greek tragedy. You bring yourself down. Trump has been a Teflon, forever. He really has been that way. He's committed many more serious crimes than, election, whatever. And he has been on a roll for maybe 3 decades. And
there's no question that Trump is absolutely, but the big failure here is the Democratic Party, Joe. I mean, this is the reality. They had this, you couldn't imagine a fellow like this being allowed to become president. Hillary, in 2016, she lost the November 2016 election. You may remember that. I do. She lost by 77,000 votes in 3 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. She did not campaign in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, anything like what
all
she
right,
should.
we're about to go off, but she won the popular vote by 3 million.
Well, she did, but we
All right.
have a
I'm glad we
electoral college.
concentrated on.
Yeah, we have a lot of things to talk about, but basically the country's in trouble.
We're off the air. All right.